Welcome to Chai with Manjula. Today we have an inspiring story of a daughter's commitment to carry on her father's work. Following in his footsteps, she has been working in the urban slums and rural villages in and around Bangalore, India for more than 30 years. Her father, Mr. Anita Reddy, was the founder and chairman of the famous Nutrient Group of companies and established the Anita Reddy Ramanarpanam Trust, or DRRT, for the welfare of the poor. Our guest is Anita Reddy, one of the founding trustees of the AVAS organization and the managing trustee of DRRT. I caught up with her recently when she was in the Bay Area. Let's meet this remarkable woman and learn about her extraordinary work. Anita, welcome to Chai with Manjula.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Yours is quite a fascinating story. 30 years ago, you left a comfortable life here in California to work in the slums of Bangalore. How did you make that decision, and why was it so important to you, and what were you doing here in California at the time?
When I came to California, it was along with my husband. We were newly married and he was going to school. This was south of Los Angeles. We were in Fullerton in Orange County. And I think it was a pre-decided situation that we would probably get back to India after our study stint here.
I see.
And I have always felt passionately in wanting to be there to work with communities.
Oh.
So it was almost logical that one would get back there.
Okay, so it wasn't a very hard transition for you. But in terms of work, it must have been hard, working in the slums and the villages over there. And before we talk about that, first give us an overview. How big is the problem of slums in India, especially in Bangalore, where your work is focused?
It's a growing problem. And as it is in many of the developing nations, I think in India too, in context of urbanization and the context of globalization, the urban poor are increasing because of the kind of lopsided development patterns that are coming out, where the rural opportunities are not that much, and people have to eke out a living, and they come into the cities to look for a better livelihood. It's not really by choice. They are there by compulsion of survival.
Yeah.
And but when they come there, they do make the cities work. It is the poor who come and begin to work in the cities, giving it the unorganized and the informal sector of labor that really make the backbone of the urban economy tick. Whether it's the transport that they're running, whether it's the cleaning of the streets,
They are
the domestic
system.
help in your house, who allows you to go to work or send your children to school.
Yeah.
All of these are done by people who live in the slums.
Right.
The issue of the slum itself, the problem of numbers increasing, is something that has to be recognized by the government and the systems. The issues in the slum primarily focus on the issue of non-accessibility to land and being called illegal citizens all the time. And basically not having the right infrastructure, the minimum for survival, the lack of opportunities, and an unhealthy surrounding, not by choice, but precisely because the kind of environment that they have been pushed into by the society or the system, inadvertently, but not by choice, that they have to live that way. They don't have water. We ask people, have a bath and go to school. We send your children to school.
Right.
They don't have water to drink. They have to go and fetch a pot of water 3 in the morning, waiting for 3 hours. So these are the kind of issues in the slums. The problem is increasing to the extent that if it is not addressed in a very conscious manner by the city governments, we are going to have a large number of population who are left out there on the streets without too much to stake to make them secure enough, leaving them extremely insecure. And this is going to lead to other kind of city problems. So first is to recognize that the slum dwellers form a major segment in your city.
Right.
And that they are productive citizens, they're responsible citizens, and they are not staking a claim for any doles from the city, that they're working and they're asking for the rights to be
Yeah,
met.
they are
That's-
basically the support system, like
Exactly.
you said, for houses as well as businesses and all that. How many people are living in these slums
In Bangalore, while this is one of the things, even now I'm on one of the task force committees talking about the urban poor to the government, and we are debating and questioning the number of people that are being mentioned officially. If they say it's about 18% of the population, we feel it's closer to 25 to 30% of the
which
population in Bangalore.
translates to how many thousand?
It would be about 3 million.
3 million.
Yes, out of
in
10
Bangalore.
million in Bangalore. So officially, we're talking
That is
about
a
30
significant
lakhs.
part of
It's a big population.
So tell us about the work that you are doing. Where is your work focused, and which areas are you helping the slum dwellers or villagers with?
This would take me back to about 30 years, 32, in 1978 when I went back. And a chance situation led me into a slum community in October of 78. The other option was to work with the leprosy afflicted, which has been a passion for me. But when I went into a slum, I knew they were as much in need. And the problems needed action as much as any other. So one thing led to another, and I began to allow myself to get engrossed enough to be able to understand what their problems were through them, rather than take it from outside and say, this is your problem, what do we do?
Right.
It's really to allow the community to tell you, these are our problems, what
Should
do we
come
do?
from within.
Yeah. And when they say, what do, we sit down with them and we say that, what have you done? That's where we started. And then we find that they have been trying, but no one's been listening. And they would have a pile of files and papers with them, but nobody would have paid heed to their cry for change. So we worked around getting them into kind of a unionized platforms or associations where they could carry their voices to the government and the system.
Okay.
And it worked well that we could really talk about participatory processes for change and kind of a democratic interventions in their planning and decision making. One thing led to another, and the government began to say yes, as against evictions, as against demolitions. And these were such a reality. We would wake up in the morning, we didn't know where the call would come from, crisis after crisis, and you know that people were going to be left on the streets the next day, and you had no time to think. You'd just go there, and you'd be faced with the wrath of a bulldozer along with the other people. And then you would have to convince the city authorities. So it took a long...
Yeah, actually Shabana Azmi was also on our show, and she of course is a big champion of slum dwellers and their rights, and she said the same thing, that if you abolish a slum, that doesn't solve the problem, they'll move somewhere else.
Yeah, and a slum has to be looked upon as a place and people, and not just an ugly eyesore to be gotten rid of. It's a home. The hut is a home. You don't need a constructed building to say it's a home. But you need a constructed building to say that they can live with security, they can live without the vagaries of nature.
Yeah, clean water and living conditions.
And the kind of infrastructure that they should have. So we began to work towards that.
Okay, so when you say we, I read that there are two foundations
That's right.
that you are involved with, or you are a co-founder of. Tell us about those two.
The first one that we co-founded together with the group of architects who came together in 1980 was AVAS. AVAS, Association for Voluntary Action and Services. And I had already been in the communities for 2 years or a year and a half before that. So when they said, let's build houses for the poor, I said, we need to build communities before we build houses. So we're already focusing on that. So let's start working with the people. And whatever inputs we can bring in together. So they could bring in their skills to plan or design, but the system still, and the government still had to intervene to make housing a reality for the poor. So we catalyzed. Ours formed just like that. I met with strangers that day and walked out with wonderful friends till today, older to me, and a lady who's very guiding in her philosophy and ideology, Mrs. Chandawakar. So all of us together, there were 4 of us who remained out of 20. And the 4 people formed the trust. And I had already been in the slum. I continued going to the slums. It had a name now called AVAS, the organization. I was alone before that. But I continued alone, volunteering my time in the slums. A friend joined me for some time. She now is a co-trustee. And that's how AVAS happened. About 4 years into AVAS's work, I took on the first person sharing what was our income at home with her. And she became my first salaried worker in AVAS.
I see.
And she remained a friend till she passed away a few years ago. So Swarna and I worked together for many years.
So what has AVAS accomplished so far?
The real thing is to have worked on micro projects where the need was felt to resolve land and shelter issues, linked to the fact of infrastructure lacking in the communities, health, education, and organization of people, mobilizing people towards participatory action. That primarily was what we worked upon.
I see.
And while crisis fighting, while every day it would be, whether it is a child who's very sick or the government who wants to kind of remove them from there, there would always be a situation that we had to intervene in the community and get people geared up for action. So we did achieve over the years, it took us minimum of 8 years, up to 15, even up to 20 years to resolve the land problems. But while we were doing these micro projects, which multiplied from one Lakshmipuram slum into Someshwara and to others, and we created about 10 to 12 real-life models.
And they are all around Bangalore?
Yeah, all in Bangalore. And each of these had a story to tell, which were people-based.
I see.
And all of them changed from a slum into a housing community.
Very good.
And all of them changed, the address changed automatically. Identity changes. And there is an upward mobility in the community. So people began to do better. And housing stock grew.
Okay, and what about the other organization or foundation that you have?
That was started by my father, Mr. Anita Reddy.
Okay.
And my father, who grew up from a village background in the villages, to building up an industry and then handing it over and moving into quite a life, was really a role model for me. In the way he lived is what taught me to be able to want to give off myself and go out there.
Okay.
And he started a small trust, a trust with all his personal belongings, I mean his personal earnings, not a company trust, not any kind of a foundation made out of industrial money, but out of a personal thing. That to me meant a lot, because what he said is, I dedicate this to the children of Bharat. And I think I had to commit completely to that. And he also says he was fortunate he had someone in his family who was already working with the communities. So he could hand it over to me and feel that I could do the best by it.
So that's your inspiration too.
Absolutely. And I believe that every rupee there, as I believed in everything else, must go much further, much further. So 1 rupee multiplies to 10 rupees all the time.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So your work is around housing, infrastructure, education, empowerment of women also? Do you have any projects towards that?
Yes, we do. And that's an integral part of the way we have functioned. It's, even though we have networked with 2 other organizations called Women's Voice and the state-level Slum Dwellers Federation, but I believe that working with women has brought the success to our projects. And they have been the core of the decision-making processes, and they have played a relevant role in implementation and ultimately sustaining the project to be successful. So yes, working with women, whether it's from their domestic violence end to their participatory end in decision-making, women have made a core of what we have done. Also, an important link that we brought into all this work is the livelihoods generation aspect of what we are doing.
I see.
And also the connect between the city and the villages and the rural areas. And we believe that the city poor are the village poor initially.
Right,
so if we begin to work in the village, then we are tapping the problem right there. And we're not going to have a problem in the city.
Yeah, actually, again, coming back to Shabana's comment, she said that, if we educate the villagers, and give them opportunities, they will stay in the villages. And that's one solution, probably the only solution to prevent this huge problem that our country has.
Absolutely. And working in the villages, I find there's a resource there that's untapped. And that if we provide the opportunity there, they even take it quicker than the city people. And there's a huge potential. And in a point to make is on this Dwarka program. It's development of weavers and rural artisans in Kalamkari art. It was a dying out art in the villages of Andhra Pradesh in Chittoor district. A chance situation took me into Srikalhasti villages, and I found that there were a lot of people who had the skill, who could do this kind of hand painting, on the with using vegetable dyes and natural.
Okay, can
dyes.
we focus on it? I'll hold it on this side.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And this is
a wall hanging?
This is a wall hanging done by twigs.
Oh, this looks so nice
and
right
used
here
in
in our studio.
And it's going to be with you.
No.
Okay, so
It's
absolutely
beautiful. So it's vegetable dyes and
Right.
it's made by
the women.
Ah.
And women who were caught in debt, women who were oppressed,
I see.
who were in a male-dominated society, who
We
today
lift it up.
are able to earn up to 5,000, 6,000, even 8,000 rupees, completely got their families out of the debt cycle, sending their children in for higher education. And this is a marketable project.
Right. So you have a market for these things over
That's
there,
right.
and what about in outside of
We have
India?
now started making links, and we have been exporting to America.
Yeah, maybe
In fact,
on
yeah.
eBay or something.
Yeah, excitedly.
These will be very popular items.
Barnes and Noble took some from us.
These are
Others are
beautiful.
looking at us. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Anything else you brought?
Yeah, we do have, and this links to many villages. So there are women from all over. Now, another village does this kind of a gold thread work.
I see.
And bags like this in different forms, in different shapes,
I
are a
see.
huge hit, actually.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and there are books, and there are photo frames, and
I see.
all of this is this kind of things are.
All beautiful. And
Yeah, it's all
people over here would love to have these
and
things.
very affordable,
nice.
very affordable.
sure.
Yeah, so and this is brought together more than 150 families in a focused manner, and indirectly 1,500 families who have become artists today and who are earning out of these livelihoods. So it is. It's not easy to do job creation. We find this is one of the more challenging things, but through the Ramanathanam Trust work and the linkages, so it's all interconnected.
Do you sell them on your website?
We do, and we are strengthening
yeah,
it.
why don't you give us your website addresses and so that people can look them up and
it's
start
called
ordering.
dwarkaonline.com.
dwarkaonline.com.
Online.com.
So in broad terms, what would you say has been the impact of your endeavors, of your initiatives in the lives of slum dwellers or villagers around Bangalore?
I believe that not just change or re-stratification, but kind of a transformation is possible. And I believe that has happened by bringing in a sense of self-worth and a sense of identity and self-belief in these people with whom we have worked. And I believe they have a message to take to others today about how change can happen.
I see. So out of 3 million people, how many lives do you think you have touched?
Well, if it's directly 20,000, 30,000, even about a 50,000 population, directly, I would think indirectly we have gone much further in what we have done.
I see.
Because we have impacted national policy. And I say that with confidence today because some of the latest programs, thanks to a good minister who's willing to think people's language now, and a system that's willing to respond to the call of the people. But I do believe the national government is speaking about projects that talk of in situ development, something that we coined and worked very hard for the last 25, 30 years.
That is significant.
It
That
is.
significant
It's very
if you
exciting.
Are impacting policy also.
Yeah. And that is where I feel I can lay to rest 30 years of struggle. But to start off in the new generation leadership, coming through empowered education programs, where children, it was a need. Where do we leave these slums now? Where do I move on? What do I do?
Right.
And we needed to find that platform of children who grew up there to be able to understand the issues in a much larger context.
I see.
And not just their family or not even just the community, but to go beyond into at least city, nation, and a globalized world.
So you are accomplishing a lot, but between these two organizations, how many people do you have working with you?
I have in AVAS, the core team, and they worked with me many long years, and they're fantastic organizers. We're just about 10 in the core team and about 12 in the supporting team.
That's all.
Yeah. In the other trust, since we run some schooling programs and off-schooling programs in education, there's a core group of 25 there.
Okay.
And we also have the community organizers, and we have support staff from the community.
I see.
And we have interesting youth networks developing now, taking on responsibilities. Now I'm very involved with youth and children, and that's very exciting. And
how do you find funding for your work?
In AVAS, for me, I began not realizing. I went in saying I'll give off myself, and I didn't know how much one could give off oneself and how far that could go. And so money did not seem a critical part when I began working, and I could catalyze between what was available in the society, in the system, and the communities, and it's their right to get that money. That the government programs, when I keep saying system, I'm talking about the government programs and projects that are there. So we did all of the housing programs by stimulating responsible participation from the people, and both from the financial institutions like HUDCO and HDFC and the government, and linking them directly to the communities. We are one NGO that didn't take money from the government, but took it straight to the people. And
do you get grants also?
To support the AVAS organization, we had a donor from Germany support us to pay the salaries of the 10 people who were with me, or the rental of the building we were in.
Okay.
And they've supported us for 25 years, but May 2012, they said they may not be able to do further.
I see.
But we are also not stagnating. We are organically growing into different groups, and I think the potential is there.
Okay.
And in the Ramanapnam Trust, that fund has supported us so far. We have done a lot. I don't ask for funding support until we do something.
Okay.
And having done that, I believe now that some amount of support would be needed to develop the institutions and things like that. But I think where there's a promising model, or there's a promising hope and an activity. I think there are people who want to give to it too. You know, they are kind of looking forward to making sure that the money they put into a program doesn't dwindle.
And tell us, what is it like to be in abject poverty, in dismal conditions, working day after day for 30 years? What are the challenges? What does it feel like? What does it do to you?
Honestly, there's not been a day when I have felt that I'm in a situation where I'm seeing poverty that hurts because it's ugly. It's poverty that hurts because nobody has seen the potential over there. And what hurts is that one takes for granted so many people who really generate the beauty and the wealth and the resource to our nation or our city. And this I feel very deeply. I honestly believe that every step I took, when I say they were my teachers, that the learning was so immense from them. One, of course, is their resilience. But on the flip side, yes, nobody can take poverty sitting down. And so a non-acceptance of poverty is the first step towards struggling against it. And poverty here is one of lack of proper environment physically. It's not a poverty of a person.
Right.
There's never a poverty of a human being there. There's poverty of hunger, physical, but there isn't a poverty of spiritual being over there. So it is this combination, I think, that brings the strength to our nation or to our poor and our people. Otherwise, it's impossible to survive those kind of conditions. But once that is seen, and they see it themselves, and then it doesn't take too much to wipe out the physical poverty. So I never felt the stench was a fragrance, so to say. I never really felt that I was moving in with people who were unclean or who were, looking just that you can't walk. It's true, you can't walk. The conditions were miserable in some of the places I've been.
I see. And what does it do for your soul? What are the rewards?
For me, this has been an unplanned spiritual journey. I do believe my prayer begins and ends with every child, every tear that one wipes, is able to wipe, has an opportunity to wipe, so to say. And I think to me, every single person every day. If I don't go into the field, and sometimes I'm so caught with administrative work, I just can't breathe. After 3 days of not going in the field with the community,
your extended family.
Absolutely, and it's a breath, as my husband says. It's my breath.
Just tell us about your family. How are they taking it? And
I fortunately have a very supportive husband who met me before I even started entering the slums.
I see.
So he knew I had a passion for this, and his support has been by way of letting me do what I want to do. And I have 3 lovely children who have grown up, a daughter Pooja, Siddharth and Ram. And all 3 have grown up having to allow me to sacrifice some time that I could have been with them. So they've given up on that, but they today I know admire and appreciate and support what I'm doing. They're all over the world, but I know I have their entire support. So
great.
Yeah.
So real quick, what will be your message to our viewers?
Take every opportunity you can to give of yourself. Just go there and believe that anytime you feel there is somebody in some kind of a need, whether it is a poor person somewhere or something else, my first message would be, yes, it's simple enough to go there and give of yourself, because you'll come home that much richer. Having said that, I would say that if you could reach out to any one program that you believe in way back in India or in other such parts of the world, that don't hesitate, just give.
Yeah,
it could be
goes a
something
long
exactly.
way
It could be something as small as how Deepika, who has always stimulated and inspired me by her enthusiasm, reached out and was able to give $17 one day. She's given much more in the past, but one day it was $17. And she gave it to Pallavi, who needed to go in for an education program that day. And it kind of just linked it, and it happened. And today Pallavi is in her higher education after the 10th standard.
Just that small gift of $17 transformed her life.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it can make a difference.
Okay, great.
That's
On
right.
that note, Anita,
So,
thank you so much for coming
Manjula.
by.
Thank you so
it's
much.
really an inspirational
It's,
story, and I commend your conviction and dedication and wish you all the best.
Thank you ever so much.
That's all for today. Our guest was Anita Reddy, one of the founding members and the managing trustee of AVAS and the Anita Reddy Ramanarpanam Trust. Both organizations have been striving to establish the rights of the poor in the slums and villages of Bangalore through initiatives for housing, infrastructure, education, livelihood generation, and even policy work. Anita gave us a first-hand and rather emotional account of the joys of giving and seeing people's lives change. A great story about giving. For more information, you may visit their website, dwarkaonline.com. And you may watch this show again at chaivithmanjula.org. Thank you all for joining. I'll be back with another inspiring story about giving and people making a difference. For Chai with Manjula, I'm Manjula Gupta. See you next time.